Hi and welcome. I'm Cassie Smith from Thrifty in 3rd grade, and I'm so glad you're joining me today to talk about guided math. Maybe you're trying guided math for the first time in your classroom this year, or maybe guided math is something you do every year. No matter which bucket you fall into, I think it is so important to get guided math off to the right start. Working with students in a small group setting can be a wonderful, magical time. However, if you don't have things set up well, it can become a chaotic time that doesn't benefit any of your students. I hope this 10-day plan will help you as you introduce your expectations to your students. So let's dive right in. Before we start, I just want to make note of a place you can go when you need more help with guided math. This is my guided math hub on my website where I share a lot of tips, resources, and even freebies for guided math. It's very easy to remember. It's thriftyinthirdgrade.com/guided-math. And if you just can't remember that, you can head over to my homepage and just click the guided math button at the top and it'll take you to this page. You can see all my resources, my articles, and like I said, the freebies as well. All right, so why 10 days? You might be wondering, what's the deal with the number 10? Well, as I mentioned, it's really important you have a solid structure to your guided math time to keep things from becoming chaotic. It's also very important for your students to know and understand your expectations. So with this 10-day plan, you will gradually release responsibility to your students. This allows them time to settle from their beginning of the year jitters, and it allows you to have time to observe any behaviors. These 10 days can also give you time to observe your students' math skills. So in conclusion, the 10 days matter. 5 days, I tried that before and it's just really not enough time. 10 days is a really great amount of time. Do it during the first 2 weeks of school and you will have guided math rocking and rolling before you know it. Just a quick note, here is the printable plan. If you don't have a copy already, this is something that's found inside my guided math units, and it also is a free download in my TPT store. Make sure you have a copy for yourself, but I'll be displaying it throughout this workshop. All right, so here we are, launching guided math day 1. This could be your very first day of school. You do not need to skip math on the first day of school just because it's the first day of school and you're doing getting to know each other activities. Okay, of course you need to build community and do those things, but there's no reason you can't do some math activities during your math block on the first day of school. Okay, I have a variety of things here, and just keep in mind that you can spread some of these out to the second day of school too, but I really recommend you get them done right away. So begin by assessing where your students are. You can do a formal pre-assessment with your students. It doesn't have to be a very long one, just enough to see like where they are. Oh, they don't know math facts, or oh wow, this group didn't learn those multiplication equations last year. So just a quick pre-assessment so you can gauge where your students are. From there, every single day of this 10-day plan in the whole group math setting, you can be reviewing the previous grade level's math skills. This is more pre-assessing, if you will, just so you can see where your students are. Okay, so then you want to start introducing your students to your guided math rotations. So you'll have everything set up and you'll be ready to model these different parts of the rotations to your students. So for example, you should have your teacher table set up, you should have the computer stations set up, any extension activities or centers, any math fact practice you're going to have your students doing. I want you to have all of that set up, and I want you to show your students where they will be doing each part. Whether you have group tables around the room, a special teacher table, or if they're going to be doing these activities at their own desk, which is what I definitely recommend. We'll talk about that later. It's very important that your students see and understand everything that's going to be expected of them. So this is your day to model. Then I want you to practice how to do a center or an extension activity, and I want you to practice this with your students, whole group, with them at their desks. Then I want you to model how you expect them to clean up a center or activity, how you want them to put it away, and you can have 1 or 2 students come up and practice with you. Then you should demonstrate how to use any websites or apps or any technology your students are going to be working with independently. Display this on a big screen using projector or a smart board and show your students actually what it's going to be like getting into these apps or websites. Then you can, if you have it all set up already, you can have your students practice taking turns learning how to log in and use these apps. From there, I want you to practice the expectation for independent work students are going to be doing at their seats. Is this going to be a daily practice page? Is it going to be a page out of your math textbook? Whatever is going to be their independent work for the day, I want you to teach this expectation and where they're going to put it when they're done, how they'll be turning it in, whatever they need to do when their completed work is finished, okay? All right, so welcome to day 2 now. So the first day we spent most of our time modeling for our students. They stayed at their own desks and they saw your expectation of how to do the different parts of the rotations, how to do independent work, how to do technology, how to do a center, how to clean it up. Okay, so they watched that, they might have practiced it with you. Now today on to day 2, we're going to be talking about groups. Okay, so if you didn't do any pre-assessing yesterday, do that today. And then let's see, continue reviewing the previous grade levels math skills during your whole group time. And then from there, you have to make your decision today about if you're going to have traditional groups or flexible groups. Okay, traditional guided math is when you have set groups of students that rotate around the classroom to different stations or tables. Okay, if you are doing that, you're going to follow step A for today. And if you're doing flexible guided math where the teacher table is the only set group and everything else is managed by must do, may do poster, and students work independently through that, then you're going to be following step B. Okay, so today the students get to get involved. We're doing temporary groupings to practice what guided math is going to look like in your classroom. So if you're doing traditional guided math, you're going to have 3 temporary groups, maybe 4, depending on how many rotations you have in your classroom and how many students you have. And you're going to start your students at each one of the rotations, and you're going to have work prepared for them so they have things to do when they're at these rotations, and you are going to be walking around monitoring your students, helping them with any issues. You're going to be monitoring behavior, making sure your students are working, and you're going to practice rotating. Okay? If you are doing flexible guided math, today you're going to introduce your must do, may do poster and explain to your students how flexible guided math works, where you will pull students to your table while everyone else is working through the poster. Okay, and we will talk more about that later, but what I want you to understand about flexible guided math is that students are working independently through their must do, may do tasks while you call names of students who you want to work with at the teacher table. Okay, these do not have to be the same groupings of students every day. It gives you a lot of flexibility. All right, so then we're going to be walking around, monitoring students as they work on their activities, and you're going to practice transitioning, okay? If you don't call the student's name, the students should continue to work through that must do, may do chart. They do not need to do any rotating because their name wasn't called. Okay, so this is something you want to practice, and keep in mind whether you're doing traditional guided math or flexible guided math, that we are walking around the classroom. You should have something independent for your students to work on when you call them to your teacher table. You should not be sitting at the teacher table. You should be up, walking around, and present while your students are learning how you want them to do guided math. Okay, then at the very end, I want you to save a little bit of time at the end. Pull your students back together in a whole group and make an anchor chart, something that you can look at tomorrow. Or you can even write it on the whiteboard, just don't erase it at the end of the day. And write down some things your students did well and one specific goal of something to do better the next day. Keep it really specific because we're going to be setting a goal at the end of each day so your students can understand your expectations clearly. All right, on to day 3. All right, in a whole group setting, you're going to continue reviewing the previous grade level's math skills. You are going to review that goal that you set for your class for today. So if you wrote it on an anchor chart, pull that out and talk to your students about what the goal is for today. You're going to use the same temporary groups that you used yesterday to practice rotations. You're going to continue to have your students work on something independent when they're at the teacher table. You're not going to be sitting down and working with them because you're going to be walking around and monitoring the class. Today on day 3, I want you to look closely for technology helpers. Which students are really comfortable using technology? And these can be your helpers once your guided math groups officially start. That way you aren't interrupted, okay? So make sure you're paying a good eye out for those, okay? Let's see. We're going to come back together whole group at the end of guided math, and you're going to talk to your students about what they did well and something they can do better for the next day, and you're going to set another goal. Day 4, same thing. We're reviewing our whole group. We're reviewing in a whole group setting the previous grade level's math standards. We are going to review the goal from the previous day. We are going to keep our same temporary groups. We're going to keep having our students work on something independent at the teacher table. And then we're going to notice behavior today, because now that it's the 4th day of school, your students are going to start to become a little more comfortable. They're going to get used to doing these rotating stations or centers, or used to working at their seats with their friends nearby. So this is when you might see some behavior issues. So today I want you to start to make note of any students who should not be grouped together when you form your groups, okay? Then I want you to come back together, same thing, note things students did well today, and set a very specific goal for the next day. On to day 5, continue reviewing in a whole group setting math from the previous grade. Review the goal from yesterday, use your same temporary groups, continue to have students work on something independent, and while you walk around and monitor the class. Please note, you are still walking around. You have not sat down at that teacher table with a small group yet. You need to be present walking around so your students see you and feel your presence as they are learning your expectations of guided math. Okay, when you come back together today, this is probably, if you start school on a Monday and you do start day 1 on the first day of school, this would be the end of your first week. This would be a Friday. So this is a good time to do some reflecting on the things you have taught them this week about guided math. I have some guiding questions here that you might want to use, or you might want to make some ones that are more specific for your class, but I want you to be thinking ahead of different problems that might arise and just address them with your students ahead of time. If I have a problem with technology, what should I do? If I finish early, what do I do next? When should I interrupt my teacher? What do I need to do if I need to go to the bathroom? Where do I put this when I'm done using it? What do I do with my independent work when I'm done? Okay, so these are all questions that you can start having your students reflect on at the end of your first week. All right, assuming you started this 10-day plan on a Monday, day 6, here we are, Monday again. We have practiced rotations for a week. We have reviewed our expectations, and now it's time to try guided math rotations with a little bit less support. Today I want you to form your guided math groups based on the data that you collected during the first week of school while you were pre-assessing your students. If you are doing traditional guided math, follow step A. If you're doing flexible guided math, follow step B. Okay, let's talk about traditional guided math first. Introduce your groups to your students. Have your students point to where they're going to be going first. So I envision this as your students are all sitting at their desk, whole group. You put up a poster or maybe even a PowerPoint slide showing the names of all the students in each individual group, and you have them all point where they start. Group A goes here, Group B goes here, Group C goes here. Show them where they're going to be going, have them point where they'll go next, etc. Today, your students are going to be in different groups with different peers, so please make sure you are still walking around and monitoring those rotations. These are your set groups. that you have decided based on data, so there's a good chance that these groups aren't going to change too much during the school year. Make sure you have an independent activity for your students to do at the teacher table. Before it's time to rotate, I like to give a 1-minute warning, have the students stand, push their chairs in, point where they're going to go next, and then rotate. Monitor how transitions are going in your classroom, making sure your students are cleaning up the way you want them to. All right, if you're doing flexible guided math, we're going to start getting our students acclimated to this. Today, you're going to call the names of students who are going to the teacher table first. Remember, with flexible guided math, you do not have a set list of students in groups. These groupings can change every single day. All right, so discuss as a whole group what everyone else is going to be working on while the 5 or 6 students are at your table. What is everybody else doing? You should have a must-do, may-do chart prepared for them so they know what to work on. This is going to be a way for your students to learn to become independent. All right, make sure you are continuing to walk around, monitor students as they move through their must-do, may-do activities. Make sure you are, noting any behavior issues because they are with different peers today. After enough time has passed for the first group, give a 1-minute warning and then call the names of the students who are going to come to you second. Okay, and continue doing this as you work through your guided math block. Monitor how the transitions go and how students stay focused on their must-do, may-do work. Do they turn things in the way you want them to, and are they cleaning up correctly? All right, and then no matter what kind you're doing, you want to come back together, whole group, and you want to get that anchor chart out, write down some things students did well, and set a very specific goal for day 7. Okay, I have days 7 and 8 here together because these days are pretty much the same. Day 7, let's make note that this should be the first day you sit down at the teacher table. If you begin sitting down at that teacher table too soon, you run the risk of your students not taking groups seriously. So please walk around days 1 through 6. Be present while your students are adjusting and learning your expectations. Then today, you can start with sitting at your teacher table. This is the 7th day, okay? Make sure your students are working appropriately on their tasks without you being over their shoulder. If they're not, you're going to want to get up, walk around, and monitor again. It may take a couple days before you feel comfortable releasing them, okay? Releasing that responsibility to them. At the end of the day, come back, write down some things students did well, set a specific goal for the next day. Day 8 is just a repeat of day 7. All right, day 9, we are almost through the 10-day plan. Today, I want you to begin by reviewing the goal that you set for your class. I want you to sit at the teacher table. You might need to go back and walk around, monitor a little bit, but I really want you to try not to. See how your students do without you being right there. Okay, do any redirecting you need to. When you're finished with groups today, come back together in a whole group setting, set your goal for the next day. Finally, we're here and we have arrived at 10 days. This is a 2-week plan, guys, and it's really important that you spend these 10 days gradually releasing responsibility to your students, being present with them so they can understand your expectations of guided math, okay? Today is your last day of launching. From this day, you will be able to go on and dive right into guided math and really spend your teacher table time working with your students, and it's just the most wonderful time. So today, stay at the teacher table. Try not to walk around the classroom at all if you can help it, and I want you to do some reflecting questions and discussions with your students at the end of the day. Give them positive encouragement, and based on any issues that arose during the week, ask them what to do if questions. What to do if you finish your center activity early. What should you do if your expo marker dries out? What should you do if someone in your group is trying to distract you? These are some things that your students are going to deal with throughout the year, so it's really important that you take the time to tackle these questions head on, because that will prevent you from being interrupted during your precious time with your students at your teacher table. All right, you're ready. You have completed 10 days of launching guided math with your students. You are ready to release them and see how amazing guided math can be this year. I recommend you pull this back out in January. When you return from winter break, I really recommend you pull this launch guide out again and maybe not do the entire launch plan, but really think about some things you need to review with your students before you jump back into guided math rotations after winter break or any long break, really. Just kind of touch base with your students, and you want to keep them working well. So I want to talk to you about my guided math curriculums. These are units based on topics, and they are standards aligned to Common Core standards and the Texas standards. They have lesson plans for every single day, pre and post assessments for each unit. They have practice pages for every day. They have extension activities, which are also centers, for every single day. Vocabulary, games, posters, tons of additional resources that you can use to teach guided math with your students this year. I think you're going to love them. I have bundles for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and I would love for you to check them out. Last year I added some digital companions to go along with these units. They are sold separately, but they are complete digital resources that are in Google Slides that you can use along with these. So you might want to check those out too if you're using a lot of technology with your students. If you want to learn more about flexible guided math and how I teach guided math in my classroom, head over to my website, the one I showed you earlier in this video, www.thriftyandthirdgrade.com/guided-math, or you can just head over to thriftyandthirdgrade.com and click guided math up at the top, and it'll take you right to that page. That is a collection of all of my guided math resources, as well as all my articles that I've written about it. So you can go check those out and learn more about doing flexible guided math in your classroom. Many teachers have told me that they have jumped on the train with flexible guided math and they are loving it. So head on over and check that out. If you still have any questions after you check out the blog posts on my website, please feel free to email me. My email address is thriftyandthirdgrade@gmail.com. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me today with this Launching Guided Math workshop. Bye.